Hi, it's Paul. Let's look at a few cases of invasive ductal carcinoma in breast FNA specimens and focus on the major features. This case is a high-grade case and it is showing obvious malignant features. So we've got a very cellular specimen, very messy, disorganized groups of cells, and a lot of loss of cohesion. See how there's single cells coming off all of these groups and lying in the background. On high power, you can see there's quite a lot of variation in size and shape of nuclei, and that those cells in the background have cytoplasm. The groups are very messy, showing really no organization. And notice how sort of the edges of the groups aren't rounded and sort of orderly. They just have cells falling off them. Little acinar arrangement. And notice the nuclei are quite large if you compare them with a single red cell. And they are showing some cytoplasm here, but very poorly organized. This is another case. This is not as high grade. Notice the dissociation of cells here. So there are some very loose groups of cells. There's also a lot of single cells. And you can see at this power that they are fairly large nuclei compared to a normal ductal cell or a red cell. And the groups very disorganized and very loosely cohesive here. So nuclei are starting to peel off those groups. In the background, these are not bare bipolar nuclei, they're rounded, they're showing variation in size and shape. And again, that group showing a lot of disorganization. The PAP's showing the same thing, so see how these groups are not forming cohesive, rounded groups, they're quite angular. Single nuclei in the background. On high power, they're not bimodal. And notice here's a feature you sometimes see. So these two have got little targetoid vacuoles in them. That's a feature of lower grade, well differentiated carcinomas. They're also showing sort of less nuclear variation, but look at that arrangement here. So very disorganized groups that are falling apart and not forming rounded bimodal structures. On high power, they're actually quite uniform looking in size, the nuclei. Occasional bigger one with coarser chromatin, bit of prominence of nucleoli, very high NC ratio, no bimodal pattern here, and not really any bare bipolar nuclei in the background. A little targetoid vacuole there, and this group is really tightly packed, but not bimodal. Here's another case. Again, it's a low-graded case, and you can see how dispersed all these cells are. They're almost like lymphoid cells, but there are little loose groups like this. I can't see bare bipolar nuclei anywhere. Again, lacking a bimodal pattern in these sort of groups. This is the pap stain. You can see there are some cohesive groups, but again, they're sort of messy and angular rather than being cohesive and rounded. This is a classic little angular group. No bimodal pattern here. And see how there's sort of pointy edges on the small groups. Really not much variation in nuclear size, so this is more architectural. So in summary, malignant breast FNAs are usually highly cellular. Loss of cohesion is a major feature. So you should have single cells that have cytoplasm in the background rather than those bare bipolar nuclei. You should have groups of cells that show loss of organization and particularly loss of a bimodal pattern. So there shouldn't be darker myoepithelial cells obvious when you focus up off the epithelial cells. There is usually some nuclear enlargement, but the degree of anisokaryosis, so that is variation in size and shape of nuclei, will vary depending on the grade. So high-grade tumours will show a lot of that, good expression of malignant nuclear features, but lower grade tumours will be much more uniform. And in that case, it's much more a case of looking at the architecture, so looking for angular groups, looking for loss of cohesion in them, and sometimes you'll see those little targetoid vacuoles. So they're clear with a hard edge and a little dot of material